This video is all of R067 for the exam in under 1 hour. So these are the characteristics of successful entrepreneurs. There are various characteristics which are often linked to successful entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur is known as a person who sets up their own business hoping to make a profit. A successful entrepreneur is someone who is making profits at the real top end where they stand out and are usually very well known. Biggest examples at the moment are going to be people like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, who are multi-billionaires. The characteristics that we need to be aware of are creativity, innovation, risk-taking, communication, negotiation, confidence, and determination. And we're going to look at those each individually. So there are various rewards for risk-taking, and the four that we need to focus on for this exam are financial independence, self-satisfaction, and making a difference or change. Taking risks can come with big rewards. A risk can be starting the business in the first place, as often people leave their career or profession to branch out on their own. In other words, if you are running a company for the first time, you would have to give up your existing job, therefore giving up your normal, standard, steady income. That is a big risk for a lot of people to do, because if it fails, you might not have a job to go back to. So as we've already discussed, it's a big risk to start your own business and give up whatever you were doing before. Taking risks can also come with some negative consequences. Some of the drawbacks to taking risks are outlined below. Financial, health and well-being, work-life balance, and personal relationships. Most important part of your business studies course, what everything comes back down to, is GALGO. Market segmentation means breaking up the market into groups based on these factors. So it's when you break up who your customer is going to be based on gender, age, income, lifestyle, geographic location, and occupation. The only ones that people sometimes forget what they mean is lifestyle is people's hobbies and interests, and occupation is what job they do. This is one that loads of people forget all the time. It is the benefits of market segmentation. So by breaking down the market into certain customers, by targeting a certain group of people, what are the benefits of doing this? So print is the benefits. The ones that are the easiest to explain is N and T. So needs of the customer are met means that if you've broken down your market and you're only targeting a certain group of people, it's much easier to meet their needs than to try and meet everybody's needs. For example, if you're just targeting males, it's easier to design a product to target males than to target both genders. The same with targeted marketing. It's much easier to advertise to a particular group of people than to try and advertise to everybody. Increased market share just means to try and become a bigger part of that particular market. In other words, to have more customers than the other brands. Retention of customers means that if you've broken down your market into groups of people, it should be easier to meet their needs and retain those customers. And the resulting impact of all of these things is that you should see an increase in profit. This topic is often missed out and kind of goes under the radar, but we need to know why we actually do market research. What's the whole point of it in the first place? So PERUG is a way of remembering the different purposes of market research. The first one is to promote the organisation. When you are doing certain types of research anyway, you are actually promoting the organisation at the same time. So if you do things like a focus group, when people are in that focus group, they will learn about the organisation, so you are advertising it without realising. Aid decision making is the most important reason, really. It's why we do market research, is to help us make decisions. If you've got research to back up what you are doing, then it's going to help you to make those decisions. To inform product development, if you are designing a new product, the first thing that you would do is research what's already out there, and this will help you to develop your own product and put all the good things that you find and maybe avoid any of the weaknesses. To reduce the risk, so if you've got lots of research to base your product design on, then the risk is reduced of actually creating that product. To understand the market means that you know who the market leaders are and what's already out there. And lastly, it is gain customer views. So in other words, you are able to find out what people think about your product and ask them for opinions. Obviously, this isn't in all of the research cases, but in most of them, you are able to find out what people think while you are carrying out your research. So the primary research methods, we have focus group, observations, consumer trials, surveys, and test marketing. Now, this is going to 100% be on your exam. In some way, shape or form, there will be a question about this. It usually has an analyze question on primary or secondary research. So an analyze question is where you have to do state, explain, impact, and it will usually be around the benefits or the drawbacks, or sometimes a combination of the two. So you need to make sure that you know at least one of the benefits of each of the different methods and at least one of the drawbacks. And you need to be able to explain that benefit and drawback and talk about the impact as well. So focus groups is where you gather a group of people together and you're able to ask them questions to find out whatever it is you want to know for your research. The benefits of this is that if they don't understand your question, you can rephrase it so that they kind of get the general picture of what you're trying to say, or if they give you short answers, you can probe them and try to get extended answers. The participants can create more ideas if you've got different opinions. So if there's multiple people in the room, you can try to develop ideas from multiple different people. The disadvantages, sometimes there might be a dominant person in the group and they will basically have peer pressure on the other people in the group, and that could affect your results. The other drawback is that you have to pay those participants to be in the focus group. An observation is when you essentially go out and use your own eyes to figure out what it is that you're trying to find out. So the benefit of this is that it's your first-hand experience, so the results are unbiased. Technically, there's no cost because you're doing the work yourself. Drawbacks is that people might not necessarily agree with you observing them. If you're kind of following people around or standing there taking notes about things that you see, people might not be too happy with that. And whoever the observer is, you've got to understand exactly what you're looking for. A consumer trial is when you give people a sample of your product to gain an insight into what people think about it. So that is the benefit of it, is you gain that live insight and reactions to whether people think it's good or not. So straight away from doing a consumer trial, you get two benefits. You see people's reactions instantly, and you can also gain an insight into what is good and bad about it. The drawback is obviously you're giving away product if they don't go through with a purchase. So anyone who doesn't uptake, you've lost revenue, is the drawback. A survey is essentially a list of questions that you send out to people to get responses. Most of the time this will be multiple choice questions, but sometimes they add in some open-ended questions as well. The best thing about a survey is you can do it online, which means you can gather responses really quickly, and often they'll create graphs and analysis for you automatically. The data can also be confidential this way, whereas with the other methods there might be other people around listening in. The drawback is that the questions must be clear, as you can't rephrase them once you've created the survey and sent it out. You might also get poor responses if you can't see the person and make sure that they're doing it correctly. Test marketing is when you create a product on a small scale and test it before you start making it in mass. So the benefits of doing test marketing is it removes that risk of a large scale launch. So let's say it was a new flavor of Lucozade and you didn't want to, produce 10 million units of it and spend a lot of money putting those out there if you didn't know it was popular. So if you do a limited edition, small scale test launch, you can see whether people like it without that risk of spending all of that money. You can also plan out your marketing more effectively because you're only doing it on a small scale. The drawbacks is obviously you still have some development costs to create the product in the first place, and sometimes you may only get a small amount of feedback due to the small scale of the launch. Make sure you remember that primary research is also called field research. Secondary research is when you do research that somebody else has already put together. So someone else has already gathered all the content and you just look through it. It's often called desk research because you can do it from your desk and you don't have to go out into the field. Big pick is our way to remember the different research methods for secondary. It starts with books, magazines and newspapers, which is pretty obvious what they are. The benefits of this is that they're written by professional sources. That means that they've usually taken their time to gather their information and it's written very, very well. It should also provide reliable data because they can't really produce a book without testing all of the data that they've gathered first. The drawbacks is obviously in a book you've got lots of information to go through, and the same with newspapers and magazines. Which one are you going to use? How are you going to find it? It may also lack detail for the chosen purpose, so whatever it is that you're looking for, to find a full book or a full magazine or full newspaper on that is going to be quite difficult. Internal data can only be used once your business has been set up for quite a while. It's when you're looking at your own sales figures, so your own kind of data to see which products are selling well and how much money you've made over a certain time. The benefits are it's reliable since it's your own information, so you can trust it. And it's obviously very cheap since you already own it. Drawbacks is that this only applies to businesses that have been up and running for a while. You can't use this research if you are brand new. Also, the data could be out of date because you might be looking at last year's sales figures. Government data is usually using something like the census, which is a legal document that has to be filled in by people, which means that the data is very, very accurate. The problem with government data is there is huge quantities of data available, so it can be really, really hard to find what you're looking for. So that serves as a benefit and a drawback. The benefit is that you've got massive amounts of information to look through, but the drawback is that obviously it might take you a while to find what you need. Another drawback is there is an abundance of information. So if you do actually go to the census and have a little look, there is such a vast amount of information that it might be really difficult to find exactly what you need. The benefits as well is that it has to be accurate by law. So everybody that's completed the census has legally filled in that to the best of their knowledge. Purchase research is when you have paid somebody else to do the research for you. Examples of companies like this are called Mintel, and they are highly qualified people, which means that the data that they collect for you is massively useful and detailed. The drawback is it's very expensive, can often cost thousands of pounds to get them to do it for you. And another drawback is that sometimes the reports might be a little bit too much, too big for what you need it for. Finally, there is competitors' data. I've missed out internet research because there are certain exams that won't accept this as an answer. So technically, when you do competitors' data, you would usually use the internet to find this anyway. So competitors' data is where you are looking online to see what other people are doing. So this method, the benefit is that it's free, and obviously it's really easy to obtain online just by doing a Google search. The drawbacks is that you might only be able to find limited information, and sometimes you could take this out of context because you don't really know the full story of what's going on. Quantitative data is when the data is numerical in nature. In other words, you can quantify the data. You can put it into some sort of numerical order. The benefits of using quantitative data are that you can create graphs, it's easy to collate the data, and you can manipulate and perform calculations with the data. In other words, you can take the numbers and easily put it into charts and graphs. It's easy for you to put the data into some sort of order and put it into tables. And you can also perform things like calculations of the average, the totals, percentages, and so on. The drawbacks are that you don't have any real detail in the answers. So you might know how many people like something, but you don't know why they like it. So the other drawback is you know the what, but not the why. So for qualitative data, this is data that is not numerical in nature. It's usually in detail and is people's thoughts and opinions. It's often very different responses for different people. So the benefits of this are that you can find out in-depth feedback about your chosen topic that you are researching into. The other benefit is it gives explanation and the rationale behind their answers. The drawbacks is it takes a long time to collate and to actually collect the information in the first place. The other disadvantage is it's difficult to actually show in a kind of succinct fashion what people's responses actually are, so you can't just put them into charts and graphs, and it's difficult to show lots and lots of people's responses in a short method. So we need to look at the different types of costs when creating a product. The first type of costs that we're going to look at are called fixed costs. These are costs that do not vary regardless of how much product or service you generate. Sometimes they refer to it as costs that do not change regardless of output, and they make this reference to this word called output. Output is how many products you are creating. So if you're creating 1,000 products or 1 million products, the output is changing. A fixed cost is something that doesn't change regardless of the output. And the examples that you should consider are things like rent, loan repayments, insurance, advertising, salaries, and utility bills. Now, in reality, we know that utility bills can change because we are seeing it in the current climate that gas and electric bills, etc., are going up. However, they are not going up because of output, they're going up because of external factors. The same with rent. Rent might go up as time progresses, but it doesn't increase because you're creating more products. So the fixed costs are the things that stay the same each month, regardless of how many products that you are creating. Variable costs are costs that do change dependent on the output. So they depend on how much product or service you are going to generate. The costs will increase if you create more product, and they will decrease if you create less. They change with output. This would include things like the raw materials needed to create the product. So for example, if it was tables and wardrobes and furniture that you are creating, the raw materials are things like the wood itself that you need to create those pieces of furniture. The components are things like the screws and the nuts and bolts that you would need to actually put it together. Or if you were making mobile phones and computers and tablets, etc., you would need things like CPUs and hard drives are the components. Stock is if you are selling a particular service or you are selling on other people's products, then you will obviously need more of those items in stock. Packaging is an obvious one. If you are going to send loads of parcels out across the world, then you're going to need packaging. and most products come in some sort of packaging anyway to be shown on the shop floor. So packaging is obviously going to increase if you are creating more products. So when we are calculating all of our sort of expenditure as a business, this is known as the total costs. The total cost is the total amount of expenditure for your business. So this is going to be all of your fixed costs like rent and salaries and utility bills, and that is going to be added to your variable costs like your raw materials and your packaging. So it's everything all added together creates your total costs. The term marketing refers to researching people's wants and needs and then meeting them. It's not just about advertising, so don't get confused. A lot of people hear the word marketing and they just think it's advertising. It's not. It refers to all of the research that goes into your audience and what they are looking for. So the marketing mix is a tool that's made up of what we call the 4 Ps. For a successful marketing mix, all of the elements must work together effectively. So the 4 Ps are product, price, place, and promotion. And we're going to look at those individually. So the best way to learn how the elements can work together is to look at an example. So we're going to look at the most successful product in today's market, which is the iPhone. For product, the latest phone with all the available features, but there are a variety of models to suit different audience needs, and they are regularly upgraded. So there's a new iPhone at least once a year, and each time it gets released, there are 3 different versions that are available. So you have like your Pro versions, you have the smaller phone, and you have the cheapest option as well. The price is always set to high for Apple products, and this is partly for a psychological reason, to make people feel like they're high class and they're getting a luxury item. They can also afford to do this because the item is in demand. It's very popular, so they can use a price skimming model. The place, Apple use a combination of high street stores and also through online methods, and you can also access them through mobile phone contracts from other suppliers such as EE and O2, etc. Promotion, Apple also use a variety of advertising methods, so you might see posters, online ads, TV adverts, billboards, and more. So for the non-digital advertising methods, these are anything that has been around before the internet. So when you hear the term non-digital, just think of anything that was around before the internet existed. Might still be going now, but it was there before the internet. Leaflets are very cheap compared to others. You can get 1,000 leaflets for around £20. On the leaflet, you can provide really detailed information. The drawbacks of leaflets is it's a potential wasted leaflet if you hand the leaflet out to someone that's not interested and it goes in the bin. It's also really difficult to target specific customers when you are distributing them. In other words, you could post the leaflet through everyone's door in the whole area and you don't know whether those customers are going to meet your target profile. Newspapers are highly detailed information. You can have huge, big amounts of information into the newspaper, and also the reader will be able to refer back to that advert at a later date. Drawbacks of newspapers are it's a smaller audience due to less people reading newspapers nowadays. Also, people could just miss the advert or ignore the advert deliberately to read on with their stories. Magazines can be easy to target specific audiences. For example, if the magazine is about fishing, you could advertise a fishing rod in that magazine. Magazines can be available nationally, which means you can get them across the whole country when you put your advert in. Drawbacks of magazines is it's actually highly expensive to put an advertisement in a big national magazine. Also, in that fishing magazine, for example, you might see lots of other competing products also advertised. The radio Lots of people think that this might be digital because they've heard of digital radio, but because it was around before the internet, it's classed as non-digital. Radio has got a range of stations to choose from, which means you could technically target an audience. The radio adverts can't be skipped unless someone changes the station, so often people will just have one station playing all the time. The drawbacks is it can be very expensive to advertise on the radio, and sometimes the advertisements might be boring without any images. Posters and billboards are the things that you would see on the side of the road as you're driving along or walking past when they're printed out really big. You can see these multiple times as you are walking past or driving past, which means that message can get ingrained into your head. They can also be placed in multiple places, so once you've created one, you could place the billboards in all different parts that you want to target. The drawbacks is if you are a driver, sometimes you might miss it because you're not paying attention to the billboard, you're focused on the road. And also on a billboard, you can't really contain a lot of information because otherwise it would distract people and they wouldn't be able to read it. Cinema is when you are basically putting advertisements before the movie starts in a cinema. Now this could be where you put the same advert in lots of different cinemas, which means it will get widespread coverage, and often the adverts are unavoidable once you are sat in the seat. Drawbacks of this is it's very, very expensive, and some people when they go to the cinema deliberately avoid the adverts. Digital advertising methods means that they require the internet or some sort of mobile connection, and they've existed since the formation of the internet. So social media is pretty obvious what it is. The benefits is that you can share and repost content, which means you might get a widespread viewing of your advertisement. It's also either free to use or cheap depending on how much you want to pay for your advertisements. The drawbacks is that people can just scroll past the adverts, and also it can be quite time consuming to create the content for social media. So the digital advertising method of a website is that you can reach a wide audience. Websites can be seen by anybody in the world. You can also contain a massive amount of information because you can have pages for whatever it is that you want to include. The drawbacks is that you have to pay fees to host the website, and there can be security issues with anything online. Online banners and pop-ups are linked to websites. They are the adverts that you will see on other people's websites. You can target these people based on the website that you actually put the advert on. Another benefit is that you combine text, images and sound all into those online banners. Sometimes they can be animated to gain attention. The drawbacks is often users get annoyed by banners and pop-ups on websites, and some users actually have ad blockers, which means they don't see them. SMS texts are a fancy name for text messages. So when you send out texts to loads of different people to try and get their attention. Now these can be relatively cheap to send out on bulk, and they are more likely to be seen by a recipient because they'll check the phone and receive a message. The drawbacks of this is that uninvited messages can annoy the customers, which might actually give you a negative reputation. And the business has to actually gather those phone numbers beforehand to use them. A podcast, you can have clear target audience. So if you put your advertisement in someone else's podcast, you know the kind of listeners that are going to be kind of consuming that product. The other benefit is that your advertisements can be disguised within the podcast content. Sometimes they might just be talking about your product as part of that podcast. Drawbacks is that adverts and podcasts can annoy customers, and sometimes they might fast forward it. Obviously, you can only include audio, similar to the radio. You can't put any visual details in. A vlog or a blog has a clear audience again, because if you are putting your product into someone's vlog, you know what kind of target audience that they have, and yours will be the same. Sometimes you can get an endorsement from that person, so the blog creator or the vlog creator, you can get an endorsement from those people. The drawbacks is obviously ads in these things do annoy customers, and sometimes you might just skip past. Obviously, these blogs and vlogs get updated quickly, so your advert would have a short-term impact. Sales promotion techniques are the methods that you use to try and increase the number of sales that you're getting. It's usually around the idea of trying to advertise your product to make it stand out from others with some sort of fluctuation of the price or something that you're giving them away for free. The first one is a discount, which is pretty obvious what that is. It's when you reduce the price for a short period of time. This is likely to attract attention more easily as people are walking past. The drawbacks is obviously you are going to make less revenue, and you can't really do this long term. You'd have to reduce it after a certain amount of time. You'd have to put it back to normal. A competition is when you run a competition alongside your product. This is most often seen in things like cereals, where you will see win a prize like £10,000 or something in a certain box. So obvious benefit to the business is that you are definitely likely to attract more customers to participate, and it makes your brand stand out ahead of others. The drawbacks is obviously you have to pay for those prizes, which means you might lose quite a bit of your cash. You may not sell all the tickets, or you may not sell all of the products, which means you might end up making a loss if you haven't made enough money to cover the cost of the competition. Bug off stands for buy one get one free. This is pretty obvious what happens, and it's a useful tool to attract new customers and to encourage repeat purchases. It's also really good to get rid of stock if you need to. The drawbacks is that it costs the business money for every purchase made, because you're obviously losing an entire product, and you are also only really able to use this on small products. You can't give a car away if you buy one get one free. Point of sale is when you advertise the product at the till. So you're trying to promote that product by placing it right next to where people buy their products. This is often seen in supermarkets, where you'll see smaller products right next to the conveyor belt where you pay. So point of sale obviously doesn't really cost you anything to do, and it will make your product stand out right in front of that person's face. Obviously, this can only be with a physical presence, and you can only use it with smaller items. You can't put massively large items at the till. A free gift is when you give something away with your product. So this obviously adds value to the existing product. It makes you more likely to buy, attracts new and existing customers easily. Now this obviously means that you're giving away a free product which you have to pay for. So that's going to cost the business money to produce. A product trial is when you give someone a trial of your product for free. So this has a benefit because it allows you to get feedback on your product, whether people will continue to buy it or not. And obviously you will get interest and make sales based on if people like your product. The drawbacks is obviously you're giving away a product to test out, so you're going to lose money, and if people have no interest, then you've wasted your time. A loyalty scheme is when you reward those people for staying with your company. So this helps to retain customers, and it attracts more people to come to your place and stay with you and buy your products. The drawbacks is that the business has to offer a discount to your customers. You're basically giving them away something for free, so therefore you have lost profits. Sponsorship is a bit of a contentious one because it's kind of difficult to understand how it's a sales promotion technique. It's more of an advertising method to me, but sponsorship is where you put your brand name on someone else's product. So this can offer widespread exposure. Obviously, if you're affiliated with good brands, it's good and it will make your business stand out. The drawback is that it costs you to advertise with these big brands or put your brand onto someone's kit, for example, in a sports team. And obviously, if anything bad happens with that brand or with that other person, then it can damage the reputation of your business. So the benefits of the extension strategies are the value being added is linked to marketing, which means you can raise awareness of that improved product. You can also retain your customers as they're likely to purchase again if the product is improved in some way. The drawbacks is that it costs money to update the product, especially if you have to go right back into product development again, and the business relies on sales of the improved product, otherwise you've lost a lot of money. With advertising, this increases the awareness of the product, and it can also attract new customers to come back. The drawbacks is that advertising can be very expensive, and it might not always make a difference, might not sell effectively. Changing the price obviously costs the business nothing, and it helps you to compete against your other competitors. The drawbacks is that a lower price will generate less revenue, and you'll have to do some research into prices when deciding what to change to. Exploring a new market. The benefit is that you can increase your customers by selling to a different group of people. For example, if you decide to suddenly sell to adults as well as children, then you've got a lot more customers. You've also got more locations to sell your product if you decide to move to a different country or to make your distribution global. The drawbacks is obviously you've got a cost to meet your marketing requirements to bring in those new customers. And also you require the distribution logistics to be able to function properly. You need a way of getting your products out to those new markets. New packaging is really cheap in comparison to the other methods, and it can increase the sales of your product. It can make it look fresh and new. However, there's still a cost to change the packaging, and some people might not recognize the product if you change it dramatically. When you are pricing your product, there are some factors that you need to consider. Obviously, it's the income level of your customers. Can they actually afford the product or not? The price of your competitor's product, so see what everyone else is doing and whether yours is like ludicrously different. And finally, the cost of production. You need to consider how much it costs you to make something before you decide how much to sell it for. There are 4 pricing strategies that you need to know. The only thing on this particular section is that some of them are long term and some are short term. So psychological and competitive pricing is something that you can do for a long time and you don't need to change it. Short term is price skimming and price penetration. So the benefits of competitive pricing. It's when you look at other people's prices to see what they're doing. So therefore you know that people are willing to pay that price. You also won't lose out on sales based on the price that you've charged. The drawbacks is that you might not be able to cover your production costs if you just match someone else's price. Also, because you're not using price as a USP, you need an alternative unique selling point. Psychological pricing is when you change the price by a tiny bit, so basically reduce it from £1 to 99p or 50p to 49p. Something where it's a very, very small reduction, but it can give you a standout edge over the competition. It helps people to think that it's cheaper and has a psychological effect. The drawbacks is that it may not be effective if it's overused because lots of people don't fall for it. And if all your products are like that, then you might start to see mistrust with your customers. Price skimming is when you start your price off at a high price because your product's in high demand. So the best thing about this is obviously you will see the highest profits and you might secure sales for a long period of time. The drawbacks is that you might put off customers because of the high price that you're charging it at, and it often prices products out of the range for some people. Price penetration is when you start off at a low price and you gradually increase it over time as you become more popular. The reason why it's called penetration is you're trying to penetrate into a new market. The benefits of this are that you get a competitive edge due to your low cost and you will increase your market share quickly. The drawbacks is you will make the lowest profits with this method, and sometimes it risks putting customers off after the trial or low price ends. The sources of support is the places where you can get help from if you're struggling with your business. A bank might seem like a strange source of support, but they can offer guidance to where you can get additional funding. They can also offer advice to how to start up a business and help you set up an account. The drawbacks is they may only help you if you are borrowing money from them, and if you do borrow money, you'd have interest to pay back for taking out a loan. The local council often have a knowledge of the local area and can sometimes give you tips on how to perform better. They will offer their guidance and support for free. The drawbacks is that you get less funding and less support, especially if the council is struggling for money themselves. An accountant is someone who deals with financial issues. So the benefit is that you get expert financial advice. Another benefit is that you get peace of mind when doing your tax returns. Drawbacks is that it can be really expensive and they only offer financial support. Similarly, a solicitor deals with legal issues, so they can give you specialist legal advice and they can offer advice on operating in new markets when it comes to legal concerns. The drawbacks is that it's expensive and they only offer legal support. Friends and family are a really good source of support because they will give it to you for free and they actually really want to help you. Drawbacks of using friends and family is they may not be experts, and sometimes you might get a loss of trust of people who don't believe in your business, or you might have disagreements. The Chamber of Commerce is where you meet with other businesses that are in a similar area. It's a membership that you can join where you can meet like-minded members. You can also get legal and human resources support. Human resources is basically the hiring and firing of staff and dealing with any sort of sickness and things like that issues. Drawbacks of Chamber of Commerce is that to join, the membership cost is expensive and you may not always get the full support that you need. The government can offer you support and they will give you free advice and funding by offering certain grants for particular people. They might also give you information on how to employ people and how to operate your business. The drawbacks is that most of the support is online and they may not offer your tailored support. A charity, the benefit of those is they really want to help you. They can help you to give you support and advice to get funding, and they really actually want to help. The drawbacks is that you get limited funding support and they may not offer you the correct support or be knowledgeable enough in your area. A franchise is when you set up a business under an existing business name. For example, opening up your own branch of McDonald's or Subway. The benefits of this are that you can get support from those successful business companies. There's also a high chance of success because you already know that they are successful businesses, and if you follow their same business plan, then you will also be successful. The drawbacks is that you have to pay royalties. So this means that you give a percentage of your profit to that company. You also do not have full control of the business. You have to follow their exact business plan. A partnership means that 2 or more people are running the business together. This would be something like a solicitor's or an estate agent. The benefits are that you can share the decisions between the 2 or more people, and you can also get funding to start up the business from multiple people rather than it just be your money. The drawbacks is that it's difficult to leave or hire new partners because you're in a legal agreement. And also there might be disagreements between partners and it becomes awkward. A PLC, private limited company, is when the ownership is divided into equal parts called shares, and some people might have more shares than others. The benefit is that the owner of the business retains full control and no one can take over. You're more able to raise money between all the different shareholders, and you've only got limited liability, which means you're only responsible for your own shares. The drawbacks is that you have to register your company with the registrar of companies, And also there is high setup costs with legal and administrative costs. Forms of ownership are the different ways that you can set up your business. Sole trader is when you work by yourself. The benefit to this is you'll have no disagreements and it's very easy to start up and manage. You essentially just need to say that you are a sole trader. Drawbacks: there is unlimited liability. That means that you have unlimited responsibility for the business, which means if anything goes wrong, it's your fault. The other drawback is that you get no sick pay and it's hard for you to take holidays because it's only you that's running the business. Capital is another word for money. So when it mentions sources of capital, it's talking about where you can get money from. So obviously you've got your own savings, you've got friends and family, loans, a small business grant, crowdfunding and business angels, and we need to know the benefits and drawbacks of each. So for sources of capital, you have your own savings, which is your own money. So the benefit of this is you've got the money straight away and you don't have to pay any interest. The drawbacks is it's your own money that's at risk, and also you might not have enough to get what you need. Friends and family, they might not charge you interest because they're your friends or family, and they might also offer you some support. The drawbacks is it could cause disagreements, and also it's awkward if you can't pay them back. Loans are always, or most of the time, a large sum of money. So that means if you need a lot, a loan is a really good place to go. And also you'd have no awkwardness with your family or friends because it's a private loan. Drawbacks is you have to pay back more than what you borrow because interest gets added on. And to get a loan, you need to have good credit and all the paperwork. A small business grant is money that you do not have to pay back, and it also often comes with advice and support. This would come from like a charity or the government. The drawback is that you only get a small amount available and you have to apply, and it's quite difficult to get one. Crowdfunding is when you get the money from lots of people that are called sponsors. Those people basically bid for small percentages of your business and they become mini shareholders of your business. There's a high chance of raising the money because you can offer it to thousands of people, and also there's reduced risk because if anything goes wrong, it's not your money that's being lost. The drawbacks is obviously you lose the percentage share of your profits to those sponsors, and also it might be difficult if people aren't interested. A business angel is a successful entrepreneur that you can go to for advice and for capital. They're often going to give you experienced expert advice and also huge sums of money. Drawbacks is it's hard to obtain these and to find them, and also you will lose a percentage of your business. Here's some takeaway tips. The first 10 questions on your test are multiple choice. This does not mean that they are easy. Make sure you read and reread the question again to double check that you haven't read it wrong. And then remove any obvious wrong answers. There's usually 1 or 2 obvious wrong answers for each one. And then if you're left with 2 left, make sure you decide the best choice. If you are really unsure, have an educated guess. For all of your costings questions, there's usually 1 or 2 main ones and then 1 in the multiple choice section as well. Make sure that you check the time periods that are mentioned and double check the question again. So in other words, check if it says days, weeks, months, year, and make sure that when you do your calculations, you double check that you've got them in the right time format. Okay, always double check your answers with a calculator, and sometimes you can even put your answer back into a formula to check whether it's correct or not. For the extended answer questions, you usually get quite a few analyze. Sometimes they're in 3 markers, sometimes they're in 6 markers, but you do the same thing. State, explain, impact. State whatever the benefit or drawback that it's asking you for. Explain it using an example, and then discuss the impact on the business. You can do it in 1 sentence if you're really good at English, or you can write 3 separate sentences, state, explain, impact every single time. And when it's the recommend question with the 8 marker, you essentially do the same thing, but you have to do for a benefit and drawback of the 2 different options, and then try to justify your choice. Some general tips: don't get stressed out by the test. There's always 1 or 2 daft questions in the exam. Don't get bogged down on them. It might be 2 or 3 marks or something that you can't really do. Don't worry about it. Just focus on the other 67. Save those questions that you're really struggling with until the end, and always have a go. Lots and lots of business studies is kind of common sense, and if you follow the structure of state, explain, impact, you are likely to pick up marks. So save those questions till the end and always have an attempt. Don't leave anything blank. Good luck. I hope you found this useful, and I hope the exam goes really well for you.